Hello, and welcome today to IPDA's webinar series. My name is Mike Johnson. I'm the National Director for the TABE test with DRC, and I'll be talking to you today about aligning TABE scores to grade ranges and workforce readiness. And we'll go ahead and get started today with our presentation. First off, a little bit of housekeeping. Within the webinar system, you're welcome to put any questions into the chat area. We'll go through those as they come in, and I'm happy to answer any TABE-related questions that you may have, whether it's related to TABE 11 and 12 or TABE 13 and 14, the new version that we'll have another webinar coming up later this month on as well. Today's webinar is being recorded. You all are in listen-only mode, but the recording will be posted to the IPDA website after today's session is completed. As for an agenda today, we're going to be discussing a quick overview, very quick, as I mentioned. We have another full webinar related to the updates for TABE coming up later this month. But just a quick overview of TABE 11 and 12 and TABE 13 and 14. And then a description and an overview of our workforce portal that aligns TABE reading and math scores into the ONET career database from the Department of Labor. We'll also go through a demonstration of that workforce portal, and then talk about how some of that research that went into the portal has now aided programs in connecting for GED readiness with alignments to grade ranges and workforce readiness as well. Just a quick reminder of the different delivery options for TABE, and all of these delivery options will work with the workforce portal that we're talking about today. Most programs are using online testing, and that certainly will continue, obviously, going forward. But there are programs that use our offline digital testing platform as well. Those scores also go into our Insight portal that we're able to capture and share with programs, as do the paper and pencil tests that are scanned into our portal. So if you're hand scoring your paper and pencil tests, I would urge you to contact us afterwards to talk about the free scanning options for paper and pencil testing. When we talk about where TABE is used, majority of programs today and across the state of Florida use TABE under the WIOA funded area. So the top left-hand corner, these are your Title II programs, and also the Title I workforce program, so the career source areas that use TABE as well. Over on the left-hand side, the correctional area within the state of Florida, Department of Corrections uses TABE online exclusively at all the correctional facilities and the intake facilities. That is done outside of the WIOA funded program, so it's a little bit separate, but that's the same model in many states. There are also a lot of programs that use TABE for college placement. Within the community college system or the four-credit college or the four-year programs, there are programs across the country that use TABE as one of the options for placement into the for-credit or not-for-credit programs. So as students are enrolling, they're not using TABE for acceptance, but more in the placement area. And then there are some states that use TABE in the high school equivalency options program. Prior to the pandemic, it was something that the state of New York was looking at, and the state of South Carolina. Since the pandemic, those programs have kind of slowed down and due to retirements and different focuses, but South Carolina still has a program that allows the TABE math test to be used as an option for the GED math test. And new this year, the state of Tennessee is launching a program that will allow students to use their TABE reading and math scores as replacements for the high school equivalency reading and math tests on the HiSET test that they use within Tennessee. So those are state initiatives that are looking at assessments that are aligned to the same standards, the college and career readiness standards, and allowing students to have a quicker, more affordable path to high school equivalency. What we'll talk about mostly today is up in the top right-hand corner, the workforce area related to TABE. So as many of you know, in Florida, most of the sheriff's offices use TABE as an assessment for hiring purposes. The Nebraska State Patrol uses TABE. Dow Chemicals in South Carolina. There are many healthcare organizations, hospitals that use TABE for their hiring purposes. The Jim Beam Distillery in Kentucky, if you go to their website, there are about 18 different jobs that require a TABE score for hiring processes for that. So certainly a lot of jobs that are using TABE as a criteria for that. The one difference in those programs that are using TABE in the workforce area is that they're typically not customers of DRC. They're partners of adult education programs. So they may be using local adult education programs to test their prospective candidates for these openings that they have. So we don't have very many relationships directly with these workforce programs. So it's certainly an area that is of new opportunities for adult education programs, whether it's Title I or Title II. Noticing that this workforce readiness area was increasing for adult basic ed as we look at the increase of focus for IETs and CET programs within the Department of Education, we started an initiative back in 2022 to align TABE reading and math scores to job readiness. And we did that in partnership with Metametrics. Metametrics is a research company based out of North Carolina. And many of you know Metametrics as the creator of Lexiles and Quantiles scores. Lexiles are reading measures, Quantiles are math measures. The big difference between other scores for reading and math is that what Metametrics does is that they measure the reading and math ability of a student, but they also measure the reading and math levels of the content they're interacting with. So textbooks are Lexiled, library books are Lexiled. So if you have students that are reading above their grade level, where do they go in the library to find content that they can comprehend but still be challenged to improve their reading skills? And that's where Lexiles and Quantiles kind of mesh together. In many states, the Metametrics works with the State Department of Education to include Lexiles and Quantiles in the state K-12 testing program. So if you're an active parent and you looked at your kids' state test report, you may see a number with an L next to it or a number with a Q next to it. Those are the Lexile and Quantile scores. What we did with this research is back in the fall of 2022, we took out the unscored questions on the TABE 11 and 12 tests and replaced them with the Lexile and Quantile analyzer questions that Metametrics has developed. So based on that research, now we have the ability to know what TABE scale score goes with what Lexile level from an alignment standpoint. On a separate project, Metametrics worked with the U.S. Department of Labor to align the reading and math requirements of the top 950 jobs on the ONET database for the Lexile and Quantile level on year one of the expectation of that job. So that's important as we talk about the workforce portal today and we see some of the scores related to jobs. And just to remember that this research is based on the expected reading and math requirements on year one of that career. So not getting into that career, not being ready for that career, but what's the reading and math requirements for a candidate that they would likely be exposed to in year one of that career area. When we look at the workforce portal, and we're going to jump into it in a moment, but just to give you a quick overview of the workforce portal, as we pull up a student in the very top left corner, we see John Weiss is the student name. This workforce portal is administrator driven, so it's not student driven. Any program that's using TABE that has access to the portal, meaning you're using TABE online or TABE offline or the local scanning for paper tests, and you have access to the workforce portal as an additional feature for TABE. So it is an add-on piece. It does cost a little bit different than TABE testing. It's $5 per student per year. So where TABE tests are purchased per test, you purchase X amount of test licenses and you can use those however you choose. The workforce portal is a little bit different, that it's $5 per student per year. So if you have 100 students and you're going to have them test 2 or 3 times a year, there's not an additional cost. It's that initial $5 for that full year of accessing the workforce portal. Typically you would sit down, so I would sit down with John Weiss and he would tell me a little bit about what he wants to go into. Maybe I'm using some career interest inventory tools that are available to my program or on the websites for many career sites. And John is fallen on the career of he wants to go into heating and air conditioning repair. So he looks at this career area. In the gray sections of the chart are the job scores. The purple section are John's TABE scores. So we see that John's a little bit below the kind of the expected level of this career area. And so as a program, this will help with retention to say, we want to build up, we don't necessarily need to get above this score, because remembering it's year one of expectations, but we want to be a little bit closer. And for you as a program, this example, I believe, if I look on the scoring guide, it's providing you 2 measurable skill gain opportunities to reach that higher score. So certainly there's a benefit for programs to achieve more MSGs to be reported back to the state for that. Additionally, on the Workforce Portal, we'll go into some of the career overview sections on what's the preferred education for this career, what are some of the tasks that I will use in this career. All that information will be pulled directly from the ONET database. And then from that area, we could point to other career areas that John might be interested in as well. So again, he was looking at heating and air conditioning repair. Some of those tasks are common to other career areas, and maybe these are of interest to John as well to look into possible areas. Another section of the Workforce Portal will pull in the salary information from the Department of Labor and where is the growth opportunities for that career for each state. So we're looking at this career for HVAC and seeing that it's an above average opportunity for Florida, and that might be an area that John wants to get into as a career area. I'm going to switch over to our portal itself and go through a demonstration of that real quick. So on the screen now, you see that I'm logging into our Workforce Portal. And as I go into that Workforce Portal, I have my username and password, and I can sign in. As I sign in, just the same as I'm signing in for TABE Online or TABE Scanning and Scoring, I can go to the Applications tab. And again, I have my reports delivery there. I have the scanning. I have the test management, just like I would with any other TABE activity. But on the right-hand side, I have access to the Workforce Portal. So as an administrator, this has been added to my access level within my TABE account. I can click on that Workforce Portal. In this demonstration, I'm going to go to our sample school that I've called ONET, and I'm going to search for that site. And I see I have 2 locations. I'm going to go ahead and go to ONET number 1 as a site, and I'm going to select my TABE data. And now I have a couple of options. I can search for a student by their name. I could search for a student by the test session that they might be in, or I can just hit the search button and pull up all of my students. And let me get rid of my email there. So there I have 14 students, and I'm going to show them all on one page. So I have 14 students in my program. I'm a smaller program. I don't have a lot of students. If I was a larger program, maybe I would type in the person's name for that. But I see John here listed on near the bottom. So again, John is sitting down with us. We originally talked to him about the HVAC, but now he's talked to some friends and they said that he should go in and work for the utility company. So I'm going to go click on John's name. Real quick, you'll notice a search happening, and it didn't find any careers for John. It didn't match his TABE scores to any career areas. And we know already from the example we saw in the PowerPoint that John had fairly low TABE scores. So his TABE scores did not align to any career yet. That doesn't mean we can't use the portal. We just want to look at specific career areas. So at the top of the screen, I can go ahead and click on the 16 different career clusters from the Department of Labor. And in this case, I want to go to architecture and construction. That's where I know the jobs for the utility companies are located. And then over on the right-hand side are all the different careers from the Department of Labor that fit under that career cluster of architecture and construction. So I'm going to go ahead and go to electrical power line install and repairer. This is a career area that John, again, he's been told from some friends that it's a good career to get into. Now I can go ahead and hit search. So from that search, I can find out that this is a high school graduate or GED level type of education for this job. As I go down below, it says that the electrical power line installer has a targeted TABE score of 547 for reading and a 564 for math. And now I see that displayed on the graph. So again, I show John, this is where you're at. We want to get a little bit closer to that 547. And I'll ask you to remember that 547 as a score as we go a little bit further and talk about aligning to GED and high school equivalency as well. So just as a quick point. So 547 was the goal score for this career area in year number 1. As I scroll down, again, I can see the salary information on a national comparison, where that is growing across the country. So this job is an electrical power line installer. We see more growth in the middle of the country, where a lot of those power lines are crisscrossing the country, and certainly more opportunities for jobs in those areas. In the South, we see, an above average opportunity, so still a growing area for this career. As we continue to scroll down, now we see some tasks of adhering to safety practices, driving vehicles that are equipped with tools, opening switches, or attaching grounding devices. One of the other ones that is important is that this job requires climbing power poles. So John has finally told me that he's afraid of heights. So although this career looks like it might be a good fit for John in what he wants to do, now he's realizing that he might not want to be climbing those tall power poles. So at the bottom of the screen, there are some other careers that use these same tasks that John has some alignment to in different careers. So we might want to go into electrician or electrician helper, and we can see that some of those are also classified as bright outlook jobs from the Department of Labor, meaning that they're growing nationally. If I go back to the top of the screen, I'm going to go back to our home screen and go back to our ONET information. And instead of John, I'm going to change over to a new student. So now I've helped John out. I'm going to go back into my program. I'm going to go look at Chastity. Chastity is another person that's on page 2. So let me go that quickly. And now Chastity is sitting down, and she, again, is not quite sure what she wants to go into. She's taken a TABE test, but we want to look at where she might be best aligned for these areas. So if I click on Chastity's name, that search is happening again. And this time we found 50 careers that align to Chastity's reading and math TABE scores. So we immediately know that Chastity's TABE scores are higher than John's, because in this initial search, it didn't find anything for John. So I'm going to go ahead and down and expand my view to all 50. 50 is the cap that we put in the portal. So it could align to more, but we're just looking at the 50 random ones. So it's not the top 50, although you'll notice that some are listed as bright outlook. So I could sort the column to show me all the growing jobs that are selected. I could also sort by the median pay across the area. And let me go ahead and see the top paying area is that economist job. So if I click on economist, because a lot of people see that salary and they want that information, and go ahead and click on that career area, it tells me that this is a doctorate level or master's degree type of career area that I need to go into. And as I look at the TABE alignment, we have not aligned yet to the reading areas, but the math areas has a 584 for an expectation, and Chastity's above that. So she's very strong in her math area on the TABE test. So she is above the threshold for math. Again, the same information about where that job is growing, what tasks are, and then again, similar jobs that use those same skills. You'll see similar type of economists or economics teachers in the investment funds areas that would use those same kind of math skills. So again, I am using this as a consultative approach with students. I am understanding where they want to go. I may be sitting with them. I may be just looking at this and finding different career areas for this specific student. But you can come in after every TABE test and run a new report to see how they're improving for those areas. I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint real quick. And just to show a couple of other jobs I know that come up quite a bit in Florida programs. So for a phlebotomist, again, the 563 is so a little bit higher reading on those areas. When we look at the solar installer for a little bit higher on the math skills. Also, we have some aircraft mechanic areas that have both high scores for reading and math for those types of career areas. If your program is specific to one CTE area, it might be helpful to look at the report for that career area to see how students' TABE scores are aligning to that. If you're doing IETs, again, it's helpful to show a student where they're aligning as readiness for this career on year 1 of that career. As we move forward, just a couple of other updates related to TABE information. Not going to go into our website, but there are two main locations for information. One is within the TABE portal that we were in. You could go to the General Information tab and find any manuals related to TABE, whether they're test directions, scoring guides. All of those manuals are kept on the portal where you have to log in for access to that as well. On our public site, you have all the information related to instructional aids. So whether it's the sample questions, the math formula sheets that are available on the public website, the blueprints for instructional alignments are on the website. Also our high school equivalency concordance that we're going to talk a little bit about as well. So all that information is on tabetest.com. Looking at that information, one of the documents that's about to be posted on tabetest.com is this chart for next test assignment. And some of you in Miami-Dade might see this and see this looks familiar to what you use internally for reading and math, and we've added the language area for programs. But this chart is just to aid programs to understand what test should a student be taking next to aid in providing the best chance of making a measurable skills gain. So I'm going to go in the top left corner on the reading test and look at a person that gets a 515 on their intake test. So they received a 515 on level E. Their next test needs to be a level M test because they're above that NRS level for taking a level E test. So again, it's just a chart to say on the left, I'm taking level E. What was my score in the middle, and what should be the next level of my test as I move forward? And again, this chart is being finished with our marketing team to be posted on the website shortly. There is also one available for TABE Class E for the ESOL students to show for reading, writing, speaking, and or listening, the 4 content areas of TABE Class E on what is the next appropriate test for those students. When we look at the reports that are available, so we looked at the workforce portal, but the individual reports that are available in the system will continue to be there, whether it's TABE 11 and 12 or TABE 13 and 14, and have that information on the measurable skills gain, how they align to the sub-skills of each test. So at the bottom of the screen, we see key ideas and details. We make that a little bit bigger for people to see. Key ideas and details has 18 questions, and they're worth 18 points. But integration of knowledge and ideas has 5 questions that are worth 9 points. So now as a teacher, I know where the 2-point questions are coming from on the test, on the reading test specifically, because I can see there are more points available on integration of knowledge and ideas than there are questions. On the second page of the individual report, we have the demonstrated skills or their strengths, and we have the areas of next focus. Those are the areas to work on to improve on the post-test. All of this data from this PDF report is also available in an Excel format that we can send to you on a nightly basis, or we can send it to educational curriculum partners, either Essential Education or Aztec, so that they can integrate that into their learning management systems and have instruction driving directly at the areas of next focus for each individual student. So again, many programs use this individual report and enter this into their own curriculum planning tool. We also have it as an Excel file that we can share with you so that it can be uploaded a little bit easier and remove some of the hand entering of data. So as we look at other research that's available, one piece of research that's been available for a little while is our high school equivalency alignment. So we did an alignment where it had students take a TABE test and then after a very short period go on to take either the HiSET or the GED test. And we looked at that data with our psychometricians to look at what TABE scores are aligning to success in that high school equivalency area. So for reading, the baseline is at 536. So if I get a 536 on TABE, I have a strong likelihood of passing the high school equivalency test at a minimum threshold. In the GED case, that's the 145 passing score. If I get a 145 on the GED, it is a great accomplishment for the student. They've passed that section, in this case, reading, and you know, they're on their way to becoming, having the high school diploma. But getting a 536 on TABE or getting a 145 on the GED doesn't necessarily mean I'm ready for a career area. Again, if we think about that score that I asked you to remember from John for that first job, it was a 547. So even though it listed that as a high school or graduate level job, it was actually above the high school minimum threshold. So if we think about that in real terms, a student that gets C's and D's in high school might not be as prepared for that career as somebody that gets a little bit better grades in high school or a little bit higher GED passing score. So again, showing the minimum score is not meaning that you're going to be always successful in that area. And that's why we see the GED has created those second and third passing thresholds, the college ready or the college ready plus credit areas of the 165 and the 175 on the GED test. Doesn't mean that you always need to get above that 165. It's somewhere in between. As we see with John in the case of the workforce portal, we want to be above the minimum. We don't want to get C's and D's in high school. We want to be, C's and B's maybe to have a better chance at success at the careers that we want to go into. So looking at reading is that 537, looking at math is that, reading 536, math 537. So again, this research is on tabetest.com already. So you'll have it in the slides here from the update presentation, but you can also go to tabetest.com, go under the resource section, and pull that research down to have the full charts for that as well. The next area is connecting several pieces of research. So we have the workforce portal information. We have our research that we did with Metametrics to align TABE scores to Lexile and quantiles. We have this high school equivalency information and research. And now we want to always have that answer, or the question from local programs is, what grade does that equate to on a TABE test? And as many of you know that use TABE 9 and 10, we used to have grade equivalence as a score on the score report, and we no longer have those. A grade equivalent is not a scientifically valid score. So our research scientists in the U.S. Department of Education, because it's not a valid, scientifically valid score, we don't put that on the report any longer. But many programs are interested in providing grade information to students or to employer partners that they might have in the community. Working with grade scores is very fuzzy. I went to high school in Wisconsin in the middle 80s. Unless you went to my high school or my district to know what standards my high school was using back in the middle 80s, you don't have an idea of my reference point for my grade range theories. I can tell you that ninth grade math to me is Algebra 1. It is Algebra 1 for a lot of people. But if I ask my son, who is 28 years old and went to a high school in Illinois, his perception of ninth grade math is geometry, because he took algebra in 8th grade. So in 20 years, I will still think that ninth grade math is algebra. He will still think ninth grade math is geometry, and maybe his kids will have experienced something different in a different state. So we want to look at that from a national perspective, and certainly it's hard because not everybody is on the same standards, but we can combine that data, and our information from Metametrics is helpful in this area. Metametrics works with about 35 states across the country to use Lexiles and quantiles in their K-12 summative testing. So whether it's the 3 through 8 or the 3 through 12 testing that states do, many of them use Metametrics, Lexiles, and quantiles. Now that we know what TABE score goes with those Lexiles and quantiles, we can make some assumptions towards grade ranges, because the one thing that Metametrics does do nationally is they norm the Lexiles and quantiles on a national basis each year. So every year they're updating the alignments of what the 3rd grader or 8th grader or 12th grader average Lexile level is. And if we have that tied to TABE, we can do some assumptions for grade ranges. We're not talking about grade equivalence anymore, so you won't see a score like 9.2 for the 9th grade 2nd month, which nobody really knows what that means. But we are looking at, can we help provide point programs to a grade range for their TABE score? So we do have a chart that's about to be published on our website. It's still going through some final edits with our psychometricians, but it's pretty complete. But to use as a reference point, I'm going to go back to that 536 that we saw on the GED alignment report as well. So 536 on reading means you're somewhere in the 8th to 9th grade range. If I'm looking for somebody that, if somebody passes their GED with the 145, it doesn't mean that they're reading at the 12th grade level. It means that they passed at the minimum threshold allowed for that assessment. So again, interpreting grade range is always going to be a little bit of a fuzzy kind of science, but we can have a general idea of a 536. I mentioned earlier that the Nebraska State Patrol uses TABE for one of their hiring criteria. They want to have people, recruits coming in at a reading level of 11th grade or higher. So again, 11th grade or higher is a 576 to 596, that upper 500 range. And it's up to them for the Nebraska State Patrol to say what's exact score do we want to align to based on looking at the TABE standards, looking at the college and career readiness requirements, looking at the blueprints to see what's covered on each level of test. If I go back to John in that 536 and being ready for that career area, again, a 536 can be achieved by a student getting a good score on level M. That's the start of NRS level 4. So I can also get a 536 on TABE level D and TABE level A, but that's an intermediate score on level D, and it's a very poor score on level A because it's the lowest possible score. So again, we want to make sure that we're looking at what's the content being covered. On level M, getting a 536 means I've mastered all of the content I was exposed to. But if I took a level A test, I have much more content above it. AP level content in most cases on level A. So I'm doing very poorly on that content, but I'm showing some minimum ability to get that 536 at the low end of the scale for level A. So again, these are guidelines. They're not rules for estimating grade ranges, but it is a chart that will be helpful for programs to say, you know, if you want to relate it back to an employer, we generally don't tell students their grade ranges. You know, if I'm working with a 40-plus-year-old returning student and I'm telling them they're reading at the 6th grade level or the 8th grade level, that might not be encouraging for that student. But letting them know that a 536 and we want to build you up to the next measurable skills gain that's a little bit more nondescript for that person. So this chart, again, it will be published shortly and posted to tabetest.com. You can use it as a guideline for that if you need to have some grade range comparability for certain TABE scores within a range. My next slide is my information. That's my last slide for today. I certainly do appreciate your time today. We do have one additional slide to talk about to provide your feedback to IPDA, both on this session and any session that you might be interested in attending in the future. There are more sessions coming up this month. You can certainly go to the IPDA website and check out the schedule. As I mentioned, there is a TABE, a more intensive TABE overview for 13 and 14 and the ESOL test TABE Class E later this month. But if you take a few seconds to go through the survey, we would appreciate that, getting that information back to IPDA to review and make these webinars as best as possible going forward for everybody. I'm going to look through the chat to see if there are any questions while we wait for you to complete the survey. And I don't see any specific questions in the chat. But if I'm missing anything, I hope that the IPDA folks will let me know that. But again, my information, you can always contact me. You'll get that in the recording of the IPDA presentation. And with that, I'll go ahead and end my discussion. Somebody did post a question. Can I look at TABE information even not being a PTS? So TABE information is available if your program is using TABE and you're using it, again, online, offline, and you're scanning your answer sheets, you can get access from your main contact person. You may not have access given to you right now, but the portal is available to everybody that has been provided access by your program. So there are different access levels into the TABE portal, and you can go ahead and contact your main contact person for more access to our portal. I don't see any new questions popping up. Again, I appreciate your time today for the webinar, and I look forward to speaking to you later this month, or maybe at the ACE conference later this summer. But thank you very much, and hope you have a good rest of the week.